It's on the stream. The stream is on.
You got the 4 downbeats there too. You know that song very well, don't you, Phil?
Uh-oh.
I don't know what that was.
It was my psychic powers.
Something behind you there.
Something behind you fell.
Oh, my Peanuts magazine.
Oh no!
Can't have that.
No.
Going wrong.
Alrighty, I think we're good to start whenever you would like.
And just to reiterate, we are not recording. Just you.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going without a net.
No net.
What could possibly go wrong?
Doing it live.
Go wrong.
Possibly go wrong. All right, we ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hello and welcome to episode 800. Yes, 800th episode of the Player One podcast. And yes, much to your chagrin, I am not Satan. Unfortunately, due to CJ's...
You definitely aren't.
I was going to say, unfortunately, due to CJ's rampant embezzlement, we did not have the budget to get Satan on the show, but yet, here we are.
I don't even need to be paid. I just love being here.
CJ's so proud of himself. Look at him.
Just the way that I wanted that to go.
Hail Satan. Welcome, Satan, and everyone else to the 800th episode of the Player One podcast. We are here to celebrate the best show on the internet, the only video game podcast that matters at all anymore. We all know it's true. The Player One podcast has been a show since October 2006, if I have my information correct. There's a greater than 0% chance I'm not completely right, but it feels like I'm right. But no matter what, it's a long time for anything, right? Like CJ and Greg have been here since the beginning. And then a few episodes in, they decided to include Phil. There's still some controversy as to whether or not he was invited or he just showed up like a stray cat. We're not here to litigate that situation right now, folks, right? We're here to have a good time. You know, in the video game industry, 2006 may as well be like 500 years ago, right? I mean, in the time that the Player One podcast has been around, there have been multiple console generations, incredible leaps in PC gaming technology, multiple new ways for people to play video games at home and on the go, a whole lot of new ways that games are delivered, and a complete shift in the way that video games are talked about, discovered, and covered. Just think about it. Since the Player One podcast has started, the concept of physical video games have gone from the standard to some weird, bizarre cult. And whatever you call video games journalism has been completely eliminated. I mean, believe it or not, folks, there was once a time when there was really a thing called video games journalism where people would actually construct well-written, grammatically correct articles that would get edited by an English major college graduate before being published in magazines. I know. It's crazy considering today's hellscape of hot takes and clickbait, but there used to actually be professionals at that job, and even more impossible to believe, we have 3 of those gentlemen with us right here tonight. So welcome, everybody, to the 800th episode of the Player One podcast. Let's have a little bit of fun. Up first, we have Chris Johnston. Everyone loves CJ. Despite his penchant for embezzlement, a continued war of aggression against Best Buy, of which he remains an odds-on favorite to win, an unwavering love of all things piratey, and a strong desire to make NFTs definitely become a thing for you, as well as a fierce determination to steal all of Greg's best friends. Welcome, Chris, and congratulations on episode 800.
Thank you very much, Rich, for that intro, and thank you very much for hosting this episode. It's great to be here.
I completely agree.
In your house?
On the 800th episode of the podcast.
You're here every week. What are you talking
Darn
about?
it. Up next, we have the famous Greg Stewart. You may remember him from such podcasts as The Weekly Commute and No, the Gas Pedal Goes There, as well as memorable guest appearances on beloved shows like Box Score, the Press Row Podcast, and Alien Nose Job. To the token Canadian, we say, welcome, Greg, and congratulations on episode 800.
Thanks. Although I do have to say, being called the token Canadian as one of the 2 co-founders kind of hurts a little bit.
Well, you know, truth can be painful at times, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to see you, Greg. How you feeling on
Good
this
to see you
episode
too.
800?
I'm feeling old. I was playing Gran Turismo 7 last night, and one of the people who was racing with us was asking, how long does 800 episodes, how many years has that been? He says, hang on, let's think about that. I started listening to you guys when I was a senior in high school,
Oh boy.
Oh,
and this
boy.
year I turned 33.
Oh,
no.
boy.
Whoa! And I was like, damn.
Oh my. Oh my. Well, on that note, lastly, we have Phil Theobald, the third wheel of the show, a man who pursued his lucrative passion for educating children only to abandon it to pursue methodically dumbing them down via the creation of addictive gotcha collection software. The person who successfully chased both me and Kevin Larrabee off the internet after sending his adoring social media minions after us in a hate mob-fueled rage. Welcome, Phil, and congratulations on episode 800.
Well, that'll teach you to claim that Sonic was never good, won't it? Now you know.
Damn right.
Now I
you
know. You know, you make a mistake once and you
Mhm.
never get a second chance.
That's what
It's just-
happens. Mess with the bull, you get the horns.
Welcome, Phil. How are you doing this evening of the 800th episode?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much.
Good.
Good.
Good. Delighted. Absolutely delighted to be here.
And, you know, I will admit, because of the aforementioned budgetary issues, I was not prepared for Satan to be here, but I don't want to ignore him too long because, you know, things could go bad. So I just want to ask Satan, how are you doing this episode 800? And you have anything that, you know, we should know about before we get going too far?
Well, Rich, I'm glad you asked. It's really wonderful to be here. I'm feeling a bit little devilish today. I don't mind admitting it. You know, and you know, I do. I have a show coming up in Atlanta, Georgia, pretty soon. I'm going to be. It's a fiddle contest I'm going to be taking part in, and I hope everyone can come out. It's going to be a good time.
Oh, I didn't realize you were doing a tour, like, and actually promoting the tour.
Oh yeah, no, I got a bunch of gigs lined up. You know, it's been difficult with COVID these past couple of years, getting regular gigs. But you know, now the restrictions are getting lifted a little bit, so I'm pretty excited to get back out there in the world, spread my evil intent, and I think we're gonna have a really good time. I hope everyone comes on out.
So many questions, but you know what? I can only do so much in one show. But... All right, so let's kick it off. CJ, now this is a sports reference, so you probably might not get this, but if I'm a sideline reporter, I'm legally obligated to
The
ask
hell
you.
is a sideline?
I'm legally
Like a
obligated to say,
goalie.
so what was going through your mind when you did that cool thing? So I won't ask that question because everyone get asked that, but I will rephrase it slightly and say, when you started this show, CJ,
Yeah.
other than taking down Gaming Steve, of course, what were you hoping to accomplish?
That was it.
Oh, to get to episode 10.
Right.
That was definitely what I wanted to accomplish. And part of it was just to stay in touch with Greg. You know, I think we played a lot of games on Xbox Live and chatted there, but it was a good excuse to check in on a weekly basis, and still is.
And if I have my information correct, you recorded it via, I don't know if it was completely over the Xbox, but like there was Xbox hardware or accessories that were part of the original setup. Do I have that right?
No, it's the
Actually,
SOCOM.
SOCOM headsets. Yeah.
Ah, okay. My
Yeah,
my Xbox fanboyism is shining through. It's a Sony fueled podcast. That's right.
That's right. We are Sony ponies here on the show.
Is that a term?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sony
yes.
Ride the Sony pony?
That is absolutely a term.
I
No
love it.
doubt about it. So I guess the follow to that question is, well, congratulations, because you clearly accomplished it because you did destroy Gaming Steve and you did make it to 10 podcasts. Well done. Well done.
That's right. We made it to 10 podcasts 80 times over. So down with that.
Some solid math there. Good job.
Yeah, that's good.
I know, right?
So I know this is a long time ago, and I'm of generally speaking the same age, a little older than you guys. Greg, do you sort of remember back? Because like I remember a lot of stuff really well and forget a whole lot more. Greg, do you remember sort of the original conversations with CJ on starting the show? Sort of what what spurred you to do it, and sort of how you originally sort of made it happen at the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely, I do. It's funny because I don't remember a whole lot from back then either. But I mean, this was all happening at some pretty important points in my life. So, yeah, I mean, it really was with the rise of shows like One Up Yours and things like that. Because, as CJ said, we used to play online, especially Burnout. Played Burnout a lot together, and we were both still pretty fresh off of being part of the games media at the time. So we were still in that mode where we were playing everything, and we were really, neck deep in video game news at all times, like very, very on top of it, finger on the pulse, that sort of thing. So when we played Burnout, among other games, that's what we would talk about. We would just chat about, the doings in the video game industry pretty frequently, and then sort of had a moment where we were both, I think we might have actually been talking about One Up Yours and podcasts in general, because I know CJ was a big podcast fan in general. And we were just saying, like, we could do this.
We're better than those guys.
We're better
right?
than them. And so we set out to destroy One Up Yours, and I'm proud to say that we did it.
Absolutely.
So,
and it's 5 successive shows too.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
Didn't stop
So,
there. You just kept on taking them down one after
another. No, but honestly, the reason I remember all that so clearly is because CJ actually came up here for my wedding. I was married in September of that year, and we continued to talk about it. I think that's where we actually finalized the plans to do it. Like, we decided, like, we are going to do this. We're going to at least try it, and we did. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
So Phil, now most of this has been lost to history, mostly because you have furiously tried to scrub it all away. But before you joined Player One Podcast, a few episodes in, you did host the I Hate the Player One Podcast Because They're Jerks show. Looking back, should you have said all those horrible things about Greg and CJ before they asked you to join?
No, I probably should have said more. and maybe they would have asked me sooner. So
your first appearance, though, Phil, was what episode? What episode was your first appearance?
I want to say 9.
Okay,
but that might be incorrect. It's been a couple days, so my memory is not as sharp as it used to be. But yeah, somewhere thereabouts.
At what point did they truly embrace you as the true third full-time member of the show?
Well, let's see. We're at 800 now.
Yes.
I'm hoping for maybe around 11 or 1200. We'll see how that goes.
I mean, you were a guest host for a couple of years.
Oh, absolutely.
Like actually introduced as a guest host.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like Jonathan Harris on the old Lost in Space show. You get that special guest star.
Well, it was tough too because we already had a third chair in Dan Dormer, so it was kind of awkward. It's like, Phil, I guess you can come on.
Yeah, but I actually came on, so
yeah.
Now, were you back then, Phil? Did you listen to a lot of podcasts? Any podcasts? Did you have any desire to be anything other than the Phil Theobald that we know? Were you playing a character? Like were you being CNN Phil? Like, there's a lot of Phil Theobald out there. Which version of Phil were you back then?
Let me tell you, I'm always a character.
even more Phil Theobald out there now than there was then.
That's true.
That's
well,
right.
I mean, just by mass.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. No, I mean, the reason the other guy started laughing when you asked if I listened to podcasts was no, of course I didn't.
He doesn't even listen to this one.
No, I don't even. When I first heard of the term podcast, I thought, I was like, I don't have an iPod. I don't know if I can listen to those. So, so I didn't even know what they were. I don't know. I don't care. I don't even like
follow
video
the
games.
trends.
Yeah. These are just audio NFTs as far as I'm concerned. Any day now, the bubble's going to pop and all these podcasts are going to go away and the world will be a better place for it. No, it was just, it was kind of a similar thing that, my kid's just walking by here, getting some fruit snacks or something. CJ and Greg wanted to get the show going just as kind of an excuse to chat with each other. And when they invited me on, it was the same thing. It was like, at that point I was living in California. CJ had moved Were you still in Texas when the
I
show
was
started?
in Houston. Yeah,
You were in
yeah.
Houston at the time, and Greg had been forcibly removed from
Yep.
our country
That's
and
true.
hauled back up north.
I believe the legal term is deported. Yes, he was
I don't
deported.
No, this was far less structured than that. It was a
Mm.
fierce kicking and screaming. But yeah, I had my two good friends who I just didn't get a chance to talk to that often, and now I did. So I got to see them and
Question-
chat with them.
Question for all three of you, and I'll start with you, Phil. Would you be playing video games as much, more, or less today if you were not on the show than if you than you are on the show today?
I think about the same amount.
Okay.
I think so. I do know there are occasionally a few weeks where I just sort of naturally don't have much time to play a game. So like Friday will roll around and I'm like, oh crap, I probably should play something. So I have something to talk about on the show this weekend. So I'll spend Saturday playing a game for a little bit. But
Right.
I don't tend to go out of my way too much. Certainly there are some games that I have played for the show that I wouldn't have played otherwise. Like when we played Bloodborne. That's not a game I would traditionally play, but it was something we all decided to play for the show and talk about. So I gave that the old college try before I bounced off it. But
how did Bloodborne work out for you?
Oh, not well. Not well at all.
Yeah.
I
seem to recall that being a very short series.
It was. I saw less of Bloodborne than I've seen of Returnal. And I've not seen much of Returnal. So
I don't. As of this recording, you have not made it to the first boss of Returnal. Do I still have that right?
in Returnal? Something to look forward to, I guess.
Greg, same question. I know it's hard too because when you've been doing the show for as long as you have, it's probably an impossible question. But do you think if you did not have this show sort of as the weekly anchor focused around video games, would you be playing games more, less, the same? What do you think?
I think you'd be playing them about the same. That's one of the things that I actually love about doing this show now is that we've settled into this rhythm where I don't think, Phil mentioned he feels obligated to play something sometimes, but we're well past the point where we feel obligated to play everything or play a lot of games, and we sort of all settled into this, I think, where we would naturally be as gamers. I might play a little bit more just because of the community that's sprung up and definitely getting recommendations for games that I might not have considered otherwise, or having groups of players sort of readily available online to play more of some games. But overall, I think I'm right where I would be otherwise.
What about you, CJ? What do you think?
Without this show, I'd be playing 2 more hours of Sea of Thieves every Sunday. So I'd be across the 5,000 hour mark for sure by this point. So no, but I think I'd probably play about the same. I don't think my playing habits have changed really, and wouldn't have changed with or without the show.
What about the kinds of games that you play? Again, we're talking 2006, so that is quite a number of years and generations, console generations back. What about you, CJ, is sort of the most consistent in terms of the games that you play or the experiences that you like when you started the show and now, and what perhaps has changed the most in what you like or what you play or how you play?
I think my tastes are about the same. I think I do play a little bit differently in terms of, live service games. I never thought that I would be playing, generally speaking, in 2006 when we started this show. I never had a game that I played for more than 100 or 200 hours, and that was really pushing it, right? Probably Animal Crossing is the only thing that I had played up to that time where I spent, over 100 hours. So looking at the games that have come out since 2006 that I've spent more than 100 hours in, there's several, and there continue to be several. And there are games that I've been playing for multiple years. That never used to happen at all in my gaming history prior to 2006. And I don't think that has anything to do necessarily with the show itself, but just the evolution of games. in general since that time.
Now, I'm going to pre-answer your question for you, Greg, and you tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong, because I feel like the most consistent, it feels like to me, racing games. You were a big racing game guy on episode 1, and here we are, episode 800, and we were already talking about Gran Turismo, right? So I feel like your love of racing games is probably the most consistent. Whereas I sort of look at, you and I were similar when the new NHL game came out every single year. We were on that day one, and now I don't know how long it's been since you played in NHL. And it's just, so I sort of feel like that would be the two opposites for you. Do I have that right? Or are there some other areas where you can say, no, I'm a lot different now this way, and I'm very similar in these other ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely part of it, and I would even go as far as to say something like JRPGs, because I used to consume those like crazy. And when we started the show, I was still doing that. But I don't think it has much to do with the show as much as my attention's lying elsewhere, and not wanting to put dozens of or hundreds of hours into games. However, I will say I think that I've been able to focus on some of my favorite parts of gaming, and I do credit the show for that. I credit the community for that. Like I mean, like you said, we're the most important video game podcast out there. Not necessarily the most popular, and but
popular.
Justice, there's no such thing. But I've said this on previous shows and other shows I've guested on, is that we've got a relatively small but very dedicated community that's sprung up around this show that I'm super proud. Probably the thing I'm the most proud of as far as the show goes. And yeah, my love of racing games has been consistent, but it's definitely kicked into overdrive since this show has become more popular, because of the fact that a small racing community has sprung up around this show as well. So I have people that I can go chat with about racing at all times, and I can race online and pretty much whenever we want to, and we have a schedule and we have series and everything, and it's great. So I think that it's definitely kicked into overdrive from that perspective. And then also I would say going back through my old gaming catalog, because of streaming on Twitch, which I do because of this show, and which this show and this show's community has supported. Again, a very small but extremely dedicated group and extremely generous group of people who check out those Twitch streams. And because of that, I've gone back and been playing through old adventure games, old PC adventure games, which is something I loved, but something I wasn't really finding the time to do. And gone back and played through a bunch of old 16-bit and 32-bit games, and especially RPGs. Again, something that I've always loved, but something that I wasn't making the time to do until I was able to structure it based on this show existing. So it's definitely, it hasn't changed my tastes, but it's definitely laser focused them a little bit more, and given me the impetus to focus more on the ones that I like.
So, Phil, same question for you, but first I have a long-winded, preamble to it.
Please, no, take your time.
And I've said this before on this show, but I distinctly remember when I first started listening to video game podcasts, they were very, very much, and I don't listen to any video game podcasts except this one anymore, so it may be the same or maybe different. I don't know.
That's
but
one
it
more
felt
than
like,
I listen to.
It felt like the show was always focused on either what has just come out right this second or what's coming out in a week or two, heavily focused on like big first person shooters, right? The big games and stuff like that. And I'll never forget, I remember because I used to have a really long commute. So I used to listen to you guys like every episode as soon as it came out. I remember you saying very clearly when you're like, I don't care about this stuff. I don't care about these new FPSs. I don't care. Like, I play the games that I like to play. And I'm not a first person shooter guy. I don't feel compelled to go play those kind of things. I just remember hearing that and being like, oh, I just thought if you were into the video games, you had to play whatever the big thing is. And I remember hearing that and just thinking, oh, that's pretty cool. That's somebody who's, whose job, as it were, back then was to be covering video games. So that long preamble to the same question of, do you still are you still basically the same kind of video game player? Do you still like all of the same stuff, or mostly the same stuff that you did back in 2006, or have you changed as well your tastes and the kind of things that you like?
Nowadays, I mostly just play Call of Duty. So
they say it's going downhill.
I don't see it myself.
Some Halo and Destiny in there too.
Yep,
No?
of course. I'm loving the Assassin's Creeds. I don't know if you've seen those. You've heard about those games? No, it's the same. It's one of the nice things about not being a professional video game critic anymore is that I don't have to pretend to care about, like, oh, there's a new Call of Duty game coming out. I can just ignore it and whatever. And if you like Call of Duty, that's great. Awesome. Have fun. I like a lot of crappy games that nobody else is going to like. So whatever. But yeah, my tastes have not really changed that much, if at all. Like I said, the show has convinced me to try out a few games that I wouldn't have necessarily tried otherwise. Some haven't really worked out. Bloodborne. Some worked out exceptionally well. Crackdown. So, it's kind of nice, but yeah, it's still my same old, just give me the weird, cutesy little platformers or some nonsense, and I'll have fun with those. Yeah.
I can tell you, I never would have heard of Ease or Gianna Sisters had I not been a devotee of the show.
And what a loss would that have been for you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, see? Exactly.
Greg,
Mm-hmm.
do you still miss Greg Ford?
Only a monster wouldn't miss Greg Ford.
Yeah. Seriously.
Greg, do you realize there have been 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 full, proper Gran Turismos that have debuted since the show started? That may speak to this show's longevity more than anything else, because I think it takes 15 years for each Gran Turismo proper to be made.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you're looking at numbered Gran Turismos. The last numbered one was a PS3 game.
Yep. So. It was, I did the math. Gran Turismo 5 was 2010, but GT4 was 2004. So that doesn't count.
Damn.
So 5 was 2010, 6 was 2013, and 7 is, yesterday? Friday?
Yeah, 9 years. It's crazy.
The moon's been over the castle a few times by now.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. So, CJ, we all know very much of your incredible investment of time and effort in Sea of Thieves. However, as we've been said, the show has been on for, I don't know, what is we up to 33 years now? Is that what it is? What is the longest period of time that you have been playing a particular game, you think, since this show? Is it Sea of Thieves, like, hands down, or perhaps back in the days when you used to turn on your 3DS, was there like an Animal Crossing or is there anything else you think that you probably have been playing the longest amount of time over the course of the show?
There are 2 games that pop out for me. It's Rock Band, just as a series in total. I'm still playing Rock Band today, or not today, but in
like right
2022, right? And then Sea of Thieves. I don't think I've ever played a single game for as long as I've played Sea of Thieves. That's at least once a week for nearly 4 years. Except for the month-long period when I didn't have my systems after moving. Probably Sea of Thieves. It's been the longest period.
Greg, what do you think? What is there? Can you think of sort of which game, individual title, has sort of occupied the longest period of time where you play? I don't mean every day, every week, but at least it was sort of in your rotation of sorts.
Yeah, for a single title, I'd say it's probably Gran Turismo Sport, and that's only been in the last 3 years. Because when that game came out, I was playing a little bit, but it's when we started playing online that I really, I spent way too much time on that game. When we're not racing, I'm practicing for the next race. So, Yeah, I'd say that. If you want to say series, I'd say probably the F1 series from Codemasters. But yeah, Gran Turismo Sport, easy.
What about you, Phil? Anything that you know that sort of stands out to you? Like, man, I was playing this game for a really long time over the course of the show.
Well, I try not to talk about it because I kind of give CJ a bit of a hassle about it. But Sea of Thieves has been playing.
Yeah, we play
lot.
together all the time on Sea of Thieves. So
Yeah,
Phil just doesn't talk about it.
yeah, I'm a little embarrassed about it. No, it's probably an Animal Crossing game if you really just want to go by hours played, just through the nature of that type of game, and not necessarily because it's like, I'm super devoted to my village or whatever. But I also, Rogue Legacy, I've certainly put
that's a good answer.
Couple hundred hours into. I mean, I know at least one version I kind of maxed out my character, which I think took maybe 150 hours, something like that, to max out one character. And then of course I've started playing it on a few others. What's that?
150 hours to max out a character?
Probably, yeah. Just to buy all the upgrades and everything like that.
Okay. All right.
So it took a while. But and then I've started playing it on other systems as well. So yeah, probably that's up there if we don't worry about like Animal Crossing or games that I've played for work that I've certainly put 100+ hours into.
I was assuming you were going to say SteamWorld, because I know you've purchased many different versions of that game.
Yeah, I have played through SteamWorld Dig 1 and 2 a couple times on a couple different systems. But that's that's not a terribly long game.
Right.
That's that's kind of why I kind of felt comfortable diving into that a second or a third time and playing through it again, because I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head how long it is to finish it, but 10 hours maybe less. So and then, like Guacamelee is the same way. Like Guacamelee is a game I've played through multiple times, but
so good.
If only I could. That game is too hard for me. I've tried it at least 4 different times, and I always get to a point, not early, but somewhere in what feels like the middle. I just can't get past it anymore.
Have you tried getting good?
I have, and even once, and I'm sure I've told this story because that's what I do. I just say the same things over and over again. But at a PAX East, and I believe a PAX East where I got to hang out with Greg and CJ, the developers of that game, Drinkbox, were there, and I actually had it on my Vita, Guacamelee, the level where I was stuck, and I brought it to one of the developers. I said, "Can you get me past this point? Because I love this game and I cannot get past it." And he tried for about 10 minutes, and he couldn't get past it either. So I felt good. Now, granted, I put the poor guy on the spot. He's at a booth at PAX East, and here's some idiot handing him a Vita, asking him to beat a level. Looking back, I'm incredibly ashamed and embarrassed about that. But hey, I was a young kid at the time of mid 40s or something, right? So
Tell you what, you bring that Vita over to me. I'll get you past that part, and we'll get you on your way. Okay.
Thank you.
I've finished that game a few times, so I'll help you out. I'm happy to.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. We have a question for Satan. Again, wasn't prepared, but the people want to know. So Satan, is it true that you are actually the cause of the infamous curse of the 4th chair of the Player One podcast?
No, that's ridiculous. No, that's what a horrible thing to say. That's very rude. I hate the insinuation. No, that curse was brought upon us by everyone's favorite Greg Ford. Everyone's all like, "Oh, I miss Greg Ford. Oh, Greg Ford is the best." But no, he was the one who cursed that 4th chair. Because he laid a stinky fart in it. He was sitting in the chair and he let out a little and that was the Ford curse that made it so the 4th chair shall forever be unfilled.
So disappointed that Satan's brand of humor is just fart jokes like
What are you talking about? Fart jokes were born in the sulfurous pits of the briny deep of hell. That's
So,
why they smell so sulfury and sweet.
so if it was not you, Satan, who started the curse, then why does everybody blame you for all of the fourth chairs continuing to just leave on terrible terms that our lawyers have advised us we must not speak of?
Well, it's you know what it is. It's that hatred of the devil. It's an easy go-to. It's oh, the devil made me do it. Oh no. Oh, it's the day. That whole the thing in the 80s where suburban moms were scared of Dungeons and Dragons because the devil's gonna get it. The devil doesn't want your stupid little nerdy D&D kids. I only want cool kids in hell. I don't want those nerds. But
Interesting.
yeah, I'm an easy. You know what it is? I'm a scapegoat because of my goat-like legs, and that is disgusting. And it's an attitude that I will not put up with.
All right.
So I would thank you.
My apologies. Look, I'm just going with what they told me. So you are disavowing yourself of being, A, the cause of the curse of the fourth chair,
No.
and B, you did not actually cause these people to leave. They left of their own volition, not because you made them do it. Okay.
Yeah, no,
all right.
no. Hey, you know what?
My God, this bit's still going.
You know what? Your bit is still going. Right up your stinky butt, you turd. You magnificent turd.
So there
Yeah.
have been many
You know how
eras.
much CJ paid
Jesus Christ.
for this machine?
To transport
Infernal
your
machine?
voice.
It was a
to
great
transport your
deal.
voice from the depths of the dark.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not that's not cheap. Get me up
Only
here.
$666.
Yeah, that's the devil's total. Mark that on the receipt.
So there have been many eras of this show. There, of course, the Dormer era, the Gregless days when he left because he feared that he would say terrible things about his employer on the internet. There's, of course, the Baby
True.
Cast. One of my favorite eras.
Yeah.
You had the Mike Phillips experience, which was its own surreal amount of time. You had the Greg Ford isn't paying attention era. You had Ethan Einhorn's war on microtransactions and digital media. There have been a lot of different phases of this show. I'll go around the.
Somebody say microtransactions. I'm sorry. I love those things.
Oh, so do I.
Terrible.
Is there an era, and I'll start with Greg because I haven't put him on the spot first yet, but I'll get to both CJ and Phil. Is there one of those eras that stands out to you, Greg, for no real reason, but either one that's a particular favorite, as well as one that makes you sort of look back and go, yeah, I probably wouldn't have done that now that I think about it.
Oh, wow. That's a hard question. I would say that Mike Phillips and Greg Ford, those eras are pretty close for me, just because I really enjoyed having both of them on the show. I'd say if I had to give the edge, I'd go with Mike Phillips. Mostly because I think that his tastes definitely tended to jive with ours a little bit more. And I was a huge fan of the Lunchcast, which was his show before he came on our show.
Another one of the video game podcasts that this show has roundly defeated,
destroyed,
and kicked out, and just
well, I mean, we just bought out the talent. You know, CJ signed
him
him to a contract, and that was the end. As far as an era that I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but I feel like Ethan's war on microtransactions definitely gave the show a different feel. That he was passionate about it, but none of us were. So it didn't, it made it feel very like we were very separated on it. So I wish we'd been able to handle that better.
Look,
but yeah,
one of the great things about the show is that whoever is on it they are who they are, right? There's never, and we love Ethan. Ethan is great. This is certainly no knock on Ethan, right? Because like you say, he definitely brought something like My awareness of microtransactions absolutely skyrocketed during that era, as well as and I'm also the physical, video game cult. I think Ethan was probably the founding.
He had every right to feel exactly the way he felt about that stuff, and to say what he said. It was more of the three of us weren't nearly as passionate about it,
exactly,
as he was. So it didn't really work as a conversation topic.
Yes, we love you, Ethan. We know you're listening, and if you're not, we still love you anyway. Phil, any particular era that makes you feel really sort of, warm and fuzzy inside? You look back and go, man, that was really a thing. And, or, again, sort of something where you sort of look back and go, that wasn't our best time, for lack of a better term.
I miss Mike Phillips. I really miss Mike Phillips. I do. I love all the other guys who've been on the show.
Even though he would continually just crush you over and over and over again in the meanest, nastiest ways.
Wait, was that mean spirited?
That's what Phil liked about it.
Yeah. I'm into that thing. I'm into that kind of stuff. No, Mike is hilarious. And like Greg was saying, his taste in games really meshed well with ours, even if it was a game that he was super interested in, and maybe we necessarily hadn't played it, or it wasn't our type of game or whatever, but he was always super eloquent and passionate about it and got us interested in it regardless. So yeah, Mike's a funny guy, and I miss Mike Phillips.
I definitely learned not to Google things as often as I would have prior to Mike mentioning certain products, topics, things like cookbooks. Exactly. Definitely.
Yeah. The Mike Phillips cookbooks recommendations were always top notch.
My Google AdWords have never been the same.
For times we could have done better, probably bringing Phil on was a mistake.
Yep. I didn't want to say it while you were here.
And I don't even mean better. I just mean like with everything, right? Like when you do something for long enough, there's got to be time. Like I know, I look back at shows that I've done, and I look at particular episodes and things like that. I'm like, yeah, I would not have done that now, or would not have said that now. I'm just sort of curious. Is there anything sort of lurking back there that you just sort of are like, yeah, I wouldn't have done that, or no? And the answer is no. It's all good too.
You know what? Honestly, I can't remember what we talked about on this show 2 weeks ago, much less what we talked about 14, 15 years ago. Certainly, I'm sure if I were to go back and listen to some of those old shows, they would be just, I would just cringe at the sound of my voice or the words I was saying. Just in the same way that if I go back and read old video game magazines that I worked for, and I'm a terrible writer. They published that, it's awful going back and looking at your old stuff. I'm sure there's probably jokes or bits that we did that I would just kind of go, oh no, that's not. I don't feel that way anymore. That was I'm sure there was some tasteless jokes that we've cracked in the day.
Well, I do remember you got a bit of blowback for your famous for your famous Clank is Dead proclamation. Your spoiler for one of the Ratchet and Clank games. I don't know if you remember that, but that was quite the controversy back in the day.
Was that? Well, that was what? Was it Future?
I have no idea.
Ratchet and Clank Future? Because Clank's not dead. He gets kidnapped at the end of one of the games. Was that what people were upset about?
I remember, and this is, again, we're going a long ways back, but I think CJ was reading or listening to voicemail. There was a voicemail or two that you got that were people were not happy with you proclaiming that Clank was dead, which, and by the way, in fact, he was not dead, in case anybody's.
No. Sorry. Sorry if I ruined your Ratchet and Clank experience. My apologies.
People learn early on that they shouldn't believe anything that Phil says.
Right.
That's only a half truth.
CJ, any particular favorite era of yours, as well as any sort of era that, might not be, again, you might not think was operating at optimal levels or something like that?
Sure. I mean, I would say the Mike Phillips era is probably one of my favorites, just because we had somebody older than us on the show, and we could be rebellious.
That's why we
kids
keep inviting
in.
Rich back.
Yes, excellent. One of the many things that stinks about getting old is when you go to like business meetings and stuff, and you realize, oh
Mhm.
my God, everyone is so much younger than me. How did that happen? I used to be the young person. Now I'm not.
Exactly. I remember being the youngest at EGM, and
Well, you
how
were
people
like
were.
13, CJ.
No, I know. Where I wasn't born until like the weekend after the original Star Wars came out in theaters, and people were like, "Oh my God, that's ridiculous! I can't believe you're so young." And now it's like, yeah, I always feel old, constantly.
And that doesn't get any better. I can tell you that right now.
No. But in terms of eras that were weak, yeah, probably when Greg left the show for a little while. There was that bit
Aw.
right up to episode 100 where it was like we didn't have Greg anymore. That was kind of a bummer. And then we slowly got him on as a special guest
Right.
week after week, and then it was just like, I'm coming on every week now.
We
And
wore
things
down.
were back to being good.
Yeah,
I hate this job. I don't care if I lose it.
I distinctly remember that, when Greg Stewart signed off. And yeah, that was, it wasn't bad. I think awkward is the term I would use, because you said, CJ, you guys were kind of you weren't really sure what it was supposed to be moving forward. It definitely wasn't bad. You had a bunch of different guests come on, I remember, and some of them were podcasters, right? And they had quality audio, and some of them weren't, and could be a little jarring and stuff like that. But look, first of all, let me clearly say there's never been a bad era of Player One podcast. You don't, that's impossible. But as look, we all are, well, except for Phil, we are all our own harshest critics. And I was just sort of curious.
Oh my God, that's so perfectly put.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty great. I don't know about you guys. I'm fantastic.
But yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was not new to the Player One podcast, but I probably got in sometime, and I know we've talked about this because, again, I always repeat myself, but I discovered the Player One podcast through EGM Live when you guys made, I think, CJ, you made an appearance on that show. So I don't know. I think it was in the teens or 20s when that happened. So, but I definitely remember, yeah, when Greg left, that was weird and strange. But it also didn't feel like, looking back, it didn't feel like it was really that long. Greg, how long were you away?
Someone would have to tell me. Like CJ said, it was around episode 100 that I came back, I think, but I do not
you were
remember
gone.
when I...
You were gone right before.
Oh, I left at 100.
You left at 100.
Okay.
Couldn't even stick around for that.
Because we were about to have a milestone, and then Greg was like, I'm out.
So long.
I don't remember.
Chumps.
Yeah. No, I don't remember how long it was. It felt like a long time, but that's because I was so, I was so used to doing the show, and I missed doing it. I mean, because as we've always said, it's mostly about three old friends who live in, well, CJ and Phil don't live really far away from each other anymore. They just pretend they do. But, friends who used to work together and didn't. I mean, it was about keeping in touch with somebody with people I really enjoyed being in touch with. So, and we just happened to record it and put it out to the world. So I miss doing it, but it felt like a long time, but I really don't remember what the length of time was. I would have to go back and check that.
Do you ever, and I know the answer for Phil is no, so I'll start with you, CJ. Do you ever go back and listen to a random episode from the past? And if so, does it surprise you how little or how much you may remember from that time?
Yes, I do go back and listen to random episodes of the show, especially around things like anniversaries of system launches and things, like just to listen, like what we thought about the Switch when it launched, or the PS4, or different things like that. Or around Game of the Year time, I will go back and listen to some of the Game of the Year shows that we did. And it's funny, like I won't remember the things that I said, but I will laugh at either my own jokes or the jokes of these guys in the exact same way. Like they'll say something and I'll have a reaction in my head, and then it'll come out of my mouth, 10 years ago on the podcast. So yeah, I do that often.
Greg, what about you? Do you ever go back and randomly listen to episodes, which is surprisingly easy now too? Like it used to be hard to go find historical stuff, but now it's like 3 taps and you can be at episode 1, 50, 75, whatever. Like it's really easy. Greg, you ever go back and listen to old episodes? And if so, any, either like similar experience to CJ or different?
Somewhat similar to CJ. Yeah, I do go back every now and then and listen to an old episode. And kind of what CJ said. I mean, there's been so many of them that the jokes are fresh to me, and I will definitely, like, if I'm listening to it in the car or something, I'll really really lose it and laugh at a few of those jokes. But the further back I go, if I fire up an episode, from say 14 years ago, I'm always struck by how I don't necessarily recognize that person with my voice. Some of the jokes that are being made, and I'm not saying anything like that's inappropriate or anything like that, but just, I clearly don't feel the way I did about whatever subject I'm talking about anymore, or even honestly, like I mentioned earlier, is passionate about things like video game news. I mean, I go back and I listen to that, and we're rattling off names of like composers and developers and their body of work and all that, and I'm not that guy anymore. So that's the thing that really strikes me when I go back and listen to the oldest of the episodes is just how different I am as a person.
Phil, do you ever, I know I said the answer is no, but I'll give you a chance to answer it correctly. Do you ever go back and listen to an episode? And if so, have you ever had any reactions that surprised you in any direction?
Well, first of all, yeah, it was very presumptuous and very rude of you to answer for me. I accept your apology. Thank you. But no, I don't. That's
of course not.
That's only half.
Oh,
true.
Phil hasn't changed, by the way. The other thing I'm struck by is the fact that Phil is exactly the same.
Yeah. A little more of me to love, but that's about
it. Well, there used to be an era of the show, and not that long ago, where we used to go over way more news headlines.
Oh yeah.
Than we do now. I mean, now basically I look at the news in terms of, do I have anything to say about these stories, or do I think Greg or Phil will have anything to say about these? And if the answer is no, we just don't talk about it.
Right.
What's the point of bringing up a news story that none of us know anything about nor care about? So we just skip over those things.
Well, what? Oh, no, bad, Phil.
You know what? I will occasionally load up episode 666 and listen to that again, because
I don't think I've ever laughed as much at an episode, and this is saying something because I laugh a lot every week. I don't think I've ever laughed at a Player One podcast episode as much as episode 666.
That was funny.
It does bring a smile to my face, absolutely. And you know what? There was a listener several months back who put together a kind of his favorite moments from the Player One podcast over the years. I forget the listener's name.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, put it in the show notes. And yeah, he went like the extra mile and sort of made a little intro for it and everything. And it was just random bits that he had pulled out of the show for, over the course of the years. And I've listened to that and kind of like what you guys were saying, where some of it's so long ago and you forget the bits and stuff, but some of them were fun, and I'll sit and just crack up at how stupid we are.
It's kind of funny, like I don't know if you listen to the Office Ladies podcast at all, or
sometimes
I know of it, but I haven't listened
about TV shows like Office Ladies is about The Office, and you hear from actors who are like, I was in the show, but I don't remember anything that happened in the show, or like I'm seeing these episodes for the first time in 16 years. And you think, oh, how can they do that? Like, they lived this thing and it's so great. How can they possibly forget? And then you host a podcast and people remind you of some of these times and you're like, I don't remember that.
Exactly.
Well, you did something funny.
I remember there was an episode that I was on where I was telling Greg, one of my favorite memories of Greg Stewart was when on an episode of the Player One podcast, he was finishing live on the show Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars. And I was going on and on about how much I enjoyed that little bit and stuff. He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, dude. I don't remember that. Like,
No memory. I still have no memory of that.
it's there somewhere.
I mean, I
know
remember
it is.
finishing that game, but I have no memory of doing that on the show.
It was on the show. It was absolutely on the
wild.
show. And speaking of compiling the news, CJ, I would imagine the way that you compile the news and the sources has probably changed either a little bit or entirely from when you started till now. Is that the case?
Yeah, it has. A lot more official press releases linked to now. A lot of more official sites and videos. And I definitely used to link to a lot of Kotaku and GameSpot, and now I sort of do more gamesindustry.biz and VentureBeat links than anything else.
Jeff Grubb, shout out.
Jeff Grubb, shout out. Yeah,
I'm sure he's watching right now. Hello, Jeff.
Maybe so. So yeah, it's changed quite a bit in that way.
Another one of my, and again, why it was my favorite bit, I have no idea, but I remember way back in the day when we all had Xbox 360s and they all red ringed. I distinctly remember Phil going through his second or third red ring, and he made a joke that he was, calling Microsoft and saying, "Do you know who I am? I'm Phil Theobald for the Player One podcast."
Right.
Being laughed off the phone.
Has there ever been a time or a place where something happened, whether it's somebody said something to you or a reference was made that referenced the show and your presence on the show, either someone recognized you from it or something was said, something that made you step back and go, whoa, hey, wow, that's pretty cool. I never would have thought that would have happened. Start with you, Greg. Any time you've been out in the world somehow and the Player One podcast has sort of been something that somebody has mentioned to you or recognized you from or somehow came up in any way?
Yeah, it's happened locally a couple of times, for sure. I think mostly at work where somebody has, listens to the show and mentions that they listen to the show. And I'm always really taken aback by that. I don't know how to react to it, to be honest. But it's still very cool. Like I'm always a little surprised by it. But going to places like shows like GDC or PAX, when we've done that a few times, or Scoop Fest as well. But yeah, it tends to happen there, but it feels less jarring when it happens at places like that because it's kind of the point. Like that's the crowd that you're doing the show for, or right. In the case of like a Scoop Fest, we're there as guests anyway, to do the show live. So yeah, I mean, I don't have any like particular stories about it, but it definitely has happened, and I'm always a little bit like, oh, what do I say now besides thank you? Like, thanks for listening. Sorry about Phil.
Phil, any real world Player One podcast crossovers in your ventures?
Nothing outside of like Greg was saying, like PAX or something like that. I do recall there was one or two times when the three of us were at PAX and we were just standing around and like someone would recognize us and come up. Oh, are you guys the Player One podcast guys? And we're like, oh yeah, we are. And then they're like, whoa, that's really cool. And we stand around and chat with them for a few minutes, and everyone, always very nice. And it's always nice to talk to listeners and stuff. But it's it's never happened to me outside of that type of venue.
Right.
And, I mean, why would it? It's not like everyone at the grocery store is tuning in each week to see if Satan's going to show up on a stupid video game podcast, for crying out loud. But yeah, it's always weird when someone recognizes us and is talking to us, and like it's super cool. Like, yes, I'm glad you listened. Thank you for listening. I'm glad you enjoyed the show and everything. But like when they start getting like, oh, I can't believe it, I'm actually talking to you guys, and it's like, well, we're not celebrities, man. We're some goobers with microphones who used to work together. So it's right. Anyone can put out a podcast, but obviously we appreciate it, and it's very sweet to hear from people. I'm glad people enjoy this nonsense, but yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. What about you, CJ? I'm sure you've had some sort of real life Player One podcast crossovers at various points.
Yeah, I have. Just like these guys were saying, usually at an event or something like that. But I've also had people in the industry that I've met uh, will be like, your name sounds really familiar, or your voice sounds familiar. And then I'd be like,
Haunts
oh,
my
well, yeah, I also
dreams.
just do a podcast. Or like, oh my God, I listened to your show. So I've had like
Uh,
that happen several times, which is always fun, for sure. So yeah, that's probably the
it's
most that's happened.
it's really weird because I've met some other people who work in like the video game industry who
Yeah.
listen to the show. The one that pops into my head right off the top of my head is Chris Tilton,
Yeah.
who is a composer. He's done
Mhm.
a lot of really great soundtracks for games and TV shows and things like that. And
Yeah.
he listens to the show or did listen to the show.
Yeah.
And I got to meet him at like an E3 or something, and he's a really nice guy. But
Yeah,
it's
GDC.
so was that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think GDC we met.
Was it?
We both met him at GDC.
Oh yeah,
I think.
I think it was a GDC now that you mention it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always weird when I meet someone like that who has an actual skill and who is actually talented. And he's just like,
Amen.
whoa, oh man, I love Player One Podcast. You guys are great. And I'm just like, you
Dude,
you
you're doing the music for Fringe. Come
Yeah,
on.
it's like, why are you
We're just
wasting
doing
your
a stupid little
time?
show.
Why are you
we
wasting
just
your time listening?
make
Oh,
fart
did you guys
jokes.
play Gianna Sisters? That's all, you got better things to do than that.
Yeah.
Go be creative some more. Write some awesome music. You don't need me wasting your time. So, but again, it's always super nice and super sweet. So,
Something else that's interesting, in all three of your career arcs, I believe when you started the show, I could be wrong. I believe when you started the show, all three of you were in the games business. At various points, you have all left the games business during the show to some degree. Phil, very much so, like going and becoming a teacher, which is like literally the opposite of being in video games. But Greg, I believe you got out of video games at some point. I could be wrong, but it feels like to me you've all, relatively speaking, sort of made several career changes, right? All of you have definitely done different things over the time. Do you think those career changes would have happened exactly as they did, or would it have been a lot different for you had you not had the show, either explicitly or even just because of just the general way of, you're always connected to the games business because every single week you get together and you talk about games and you talk about the industry, not just individual games and stuff. Do you think your career arcs would have been exactly the same, or do you think they might have been different had you not been on the show the whole time? We'll start with you, Greg.
I think my career changed a lot based on this show, although it was a choice to be out of the games industry. Because when I started this show, I had gotten out of the games industry actually, and doing this show and having such a good time doing it is actually what convinced me to go back to school.
Gotcha.
And be trained. I went back for radio and got trained for radio broadcast and for television, and did get a radio job for a while and a television job for a while, which if the industry was more healthy, I would hopefully still be doing today, because I really, really enjoy this stuff. But it was totally from doing this show that I was inspired to even try that. I don't know what I would be doing without that. Now, I did go back to the games industry, so I think that doing the show also kind of rekindled my interest in doing that sort of thing. Again, talking to people like CJ and Phil, who were both actively in the games industry, I think at that point, both of them were. So, hearing that they were still enjoying doing that sort of thing, and sort of got me to, when I realized I needed a better paying job, I decided to chase the games industry again. Now I'm no longer in the games industry. I found I'm still in software, but not in games. And I found a really happy place, but I do credit the show for adjusting my trajectory, my professional trajectory. Yeah. In a big way.
Phil, what about you? again, you have made several significant career changes, and you're back in the games industry, and not just back in the games industry, but back in in a big way in one of the world's most popular intellectual properties. Do you think your career would be exactly as it is had you not been part of the show, or do you think it'd be a lot different?
I think everything I do is despite the Player One podcast.
Did you say despite or
to spite?
to spite? I want to be clear on that.
Pick your favorite.
Oh, column A, a little from column
It can
B.
be two things. You know what? I don't know if the show really has affected my career trajectory. Because honestly, I do just treat this show as just getting together and getting to chat with CJ and Greg every week.
Wait, you mean you don't prepare every week? I'm shocked. Shocked, I say.
I mean, CJ doesn't prepare, and he's the boss of the show. What do you expect me
I
to
prepare
do?
a little bit. I put news headlines in the outline. That's about it.
He is very offended that I suggested he's not spending his 5 minutes putting the news stories up.
That's right.
Hey,
Kidding,
5 minutes of
CJ,
prep is
shade.
still 5 minutes of
I'm
prep. Dang
kidding.
it.
No, well, because I'm trying to think back even when we first started this show. I don't know what I was doing career-wise at the beginning. Because CJ, you were in Houston, so you were at the
GameSpy,
Anime
weren't you?
magazine, right?
Yeah, I was a new type.
Okay. And
Weren't you
Greg,
at
what were you doing
GameSpy?
at the beginning?
I'm not. I don't remember. I had left Vicious Cycle. I was freelancing. I was
Okay.
freelancing for a living. I was doing freelance game reviews and stuff.
No more lucrative job in the world than freelancing for video
That
games
was, you know
writing.
what? I feel
Oh
like I
my
was on the
God.
tail end of when you could make a living doing that. I
Wow.
shouldn't say that, because I think there's still people who do make a living, much more talented than I. It was the tail end of the time that I could make a living doing
There you
that.
go. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I was in school, maybe? Well, you know what? It had to have been after I had left GameSpy.
I feel like you were getting your whatever you needed to teach. While you were on the show.
I had gone back, because I'd left GameSpy at the time to go back to school, and I had to finish up my bachelor's degree.
I believe you actually killed that magazine along with several other magazines.
Well, that was a
during
website,
that time frame.
first of all.
Right. Good
It was
point.
a website.
Good point. My bad.
So you can't kill a website.
Phil,
You can just-
Phil doesn't kill those things. He just turns out the lights when he leaves.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly. No, GameSpy existed for a couple of years after I left, but I'll tell you what, though, that was one of the ones I could see the writing on the wall.
Existed being the operative term.
Yeah, because that was because they had been bought by IGN, and it was one of those things. It was like none of us at GameSpy really understood why we were still around. If it's like IGN owns us, and does IGN really need this kind of superfluous little website that's kind of doing the same thing? No, they aren't. But yeah, so I between, because I was at school and I was doing freelance work for a while, and then Nintendo Power, and then I got the teaching job eventually, and then I moved to my existing job at my current company. But yeah, I it sounds kind of anticlimactic to say, but no, I don't think the show has affected any of that. Because I mean, for a good chunk of the show, I was not concerned with doing video game stuff professionally, and as much as I love the show and as much as I love CJ and Greg, it was not the Player One podcast that made me decide to leave teaching and get back into games. It was just a good opportunity showed up that pays a bit more than teaching, which
income is a good thing.
Statistically speaking, most things pay more than teaching.
As the husband of a teacher, I can strongly agree with that statement.
Yeah, it's a shame. A real shame.
Yep.
But So no, I'm sorry.
It's okay. If the
Sorry.
answer is no, it's okay. CJ, what about you? Has your career been directly impacted, do you think? Or not even impacted, but do you think that your career arc meshed with the Player One podcast? Has it had a significant impact, a modern impact, or really do you think it would have sort of been the same regardless of the show?
Would have been the same without regardless, really. I think. Yeah, I can't think of any. Although, I mean, the career path that I've taken in attempting to get other jobs may have killed the show at times. There were times where there was
there was a close call there at one point that Phil and I were actually making plans to carry on without
yeah.
CJ.
That's right. Back in 2011, there was a point where I may have been leaving for a good while. So yeah,
Hey,
but
Greg, if CJ had left, how long do you think you and I would
Year
have kept this
tops.
A year?
A year?
No.
I'm being optimistic.
A month max. Even I know. Even I recognize that.
Yeah, because I certainly wasn't going to edit it.
I know.
who's going to put in the chapter markers? Yeah.
Oh, they wouldn't have been a thing.
No, it's a chapter marker.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't think the career trajectory I took was impacted by the show, but I think my career trajectory could have impacted the show. We could have been to a point where we didn't get past episode 500 or 300 in some cases. So yeah.
So CJ, do you? And I know this is a very difficult question. Do you have a favorite episode, like just one that boom you automatically know is a favorite, or are there are there just too many different types of things that would make that question impossible to answer?
Ooh, favorite episode. I mean, so many.
How do you pick a favorite child?
How do you pick a favorite? There's 800. Gosh. No, I think I have a number of them. You know, I always enjoy our Game of the Year episodes. I think those are fun.
Love those.
When we used to do a recap of some of the headlines of that year, even though that was such a ridiculous, like it was so hard to go back and collect everything up. Those were kind of fun to do. When we did like system look backs or like retrospectives, those were fun. None of the Game Club episodes, just cut those out entirely.
I was told not to bring up those two words combined, Game Club, for this episode.
The Bully Game Club episode was pretty good.
Yeah. Still got to edit that one. Yeah, it was one of the better ones.
What about you, Greg?
Though it's going to be great.
Yeah.
What about you, Greg? Is there a particular episode that just for whatever reason you just sort of recall as a favorite, or are there just far too many to even have that?
I mean, there are a few. I don't think I could pick just one, but I feel like every now and then we really hit on something. We tend not to repeat them because, well, for a couple of them up until tonight, they seemed like they would be too much work to repeat. But like 666.
Yes,
I was really proud of that. It was really well received.
The classic choice.
Dormerbot, the Dormerbot episode. I've always been really proud of.
Wait, I don't have a robot voice on here yet.
Especially because that one was done very last minute.
Oh my god!
Because Dan just disappeared on us.
Here's how good that episode was. I didn't even understand what was happening, and I was laughing like crazy. That's how organically funny that episode was. Because I really, the whole Dormer era is before my time, right? Like, and that. So anyway, that's how great that episode was. I didn't even understand it, and it was hysterical.
And that was one of our. I think that was one of it. It wasn't our first, but it was one of our Game of the Year episodes.
Yeah.
And Dan wasn't available or didn't show up or something, but we had enough time that we sort of just came up with that idea, and we gathered up 5 stupid games to make his top 5 list and just went for it, and it was so well received. but then I think really I have to go with CJ. Where our Game of the Year episodes, I really like our. I'm proud of the way they go. I hear people talking about things like the Giant Bomb Game of the Year, like marathons, and me as a potential listener has no time or inclination to listen to that. So I kind of like how we just do our quick top fives, and we just geek out over the 5 to 15 games the three of us collectively loved that year, and go with that. And then just to I think further to that, I know we're not supposed to say Game Club, but I'd say even back before we used that name, any series of episodes, and I'd say that The Walking Dead was the first one.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But any series of episodes where we're all playing a game pretty much at the same pace, we all love it. I'd say the most recent was probably Guardians of the Galaxy. Where all three of us are just or all four of us sometimes are very invested in a series or a game, and we're all playing it at the same time. Some of our best episodes have been organically just talking about those games that we're playing together and that we all universally love.
I couldn't agree more. And as a fan of the show, I can absolutely agree that those are when all of you guys are playing something at the same time, it just comes across, whether you love it, or you like it, or even when you don't like it, it doesn't matter. Just sort of that the triumvirate of you guys all talking about it at the same time is really, really excellent. So Phil, I'm going to skip you. I'm going to go right to Satan. So Satan, we all know episode 666 is your personal favorite, but other than that, do you have any past episodes of the Player One podcast that really stand out to you?
Well, episode 665, obviously, because that's when you're just like, you're waiting, pins and needles. I wonder if the devil's going to show up. Is he going to be here? I hope he does. I hope he shows up next week. And then bam, there he was, in all his devilish glory, spreading evil and hate. Oh boy, it's so much fun. You know what? I think the Dormerbot, though, to give a serious answer, Dormerbot's really funny. Yeah, this stupid voice. You get like some sort of stupid modulator on someone's voice, and you're just like, oh man, that dude sounds like a robot. It's pretty funny. So yeah, that's probably my favorite out of the bunch.
So, unlike you guys, I used to host a show about a particular genre of a video game, and I cannot go back and listen to it because I realized I literally had no idea what I was talking about as I was espousing all of this knowledge about these kinds of things. So I have a really hard time going back and listening to old episodes of the shows that I hosted. But I will ask you guys this question. Do you have an episode of the Player One podcast that you kind of sort of wish had never seen the light of day? And I'm going to start with Phil, because there were a couple episodes where I know that you have actually said it out loud, like, yeah, we never should have made that episode because CJ was away or something like that. There was a couple back there.
Yeah, usually when we have a real dud episode, it is because one of us is not there. And now the episodes when I'm not around, I mean, they're probably terrible just because I am the linchpin, as we all know. But I wouldn't know because I certainly never listened to them. So they might be the best episodes ever. But I do know that when I'm on a show and either CJ or Greg is missing, for as good of a friend as I am with CJ and as good of a friend as I am with Greg, there's just something missing when one of us is gone, and we struggle, and sometimes it works, a lot of times it doesn't, but we make do. But yeah, that's probably those.
Greg, and again, this isn't like asking for a specific episode, right? But do you ever remember sort of at the end of a show sort of kicking back and thinking, yeah, that wasn't necessarily my best work. We probably could have done a little bit of probably could have done a little bit better had CJ been there, for example.
Yeah. I'm sure there's been moments like that. I think there's been a couple of when CJ, we've had a couple episodes where CJ wasn't here, where it was just Phil and I thought those episodes went pretty well. But Phil's right; there's a completely different dynamic
Oh yeah.
there, for better or worse. A couple of those episodes did not go well, but a few of them have been really good too. And I think we've gotten better at it when CJ's not around, at making something that's interesting to listen to, when it's just us playing off of each other. But yeah, I really, looking back on it, I'm pretty happy with everything that we've put out, for better or worse.
So, Greg, excuse me, CJ, I believe that you, even if you're not hosting the episode, you still wind up editing them and publishing them. So have there been any episodes that you have perhaps not appeared on and been responsible for publishing and sort of thought to yourself, I don't know about this one, guys. Not sure.
Well, here's the thing about those episodes. I don't listen to any of them while I'm editing them at all. Like, I'll put the intro music in, I'll do the outro thing, but usually they don't even have chapter markers because I just basically don't listen to the episode at all. I'll ask Phil or Greg for, hey, what should we call this episode, and what's the summary of what you even talked about? And sometimes they will give me something, and sometimes they'll be like, what the hell did we talk about? Even though it was less than 24 hours since they recorded it. Usually be like, what should we title this episode? And sometimes it's wrong. Like, there'll be a bit from the episode, they'll say, hey, or call it this, and then I'll listen back to the episode after we published it.
Right.
And the bit is something completely different than you told me.
We're invoking the spirit of. It's not supposed to be a verbatim thing.
Right.
You want to set a tone.
Yeah.
Hey,
well, of course, the best episode never published, episode 185, the lost episode. Like,
oh my,
yeah.
Rich, I'm gonna go back to favorite episodes.
Okay.
Because I didn't get to say it. You asked Satan. You were like, I'm skipping. No, you know what? I don't need this. I don't need this disrespect. You devil lover. I get it.
Everybody loves the devil. You know that.
You bet they do. Oh boy. And I love being loved, let me tell you.
I'm starting to regret that.
Can't take it away now.
I know where you live, Phil.
It's all hooked up. You're gonna have to dismantle. You're gonna have to pull all those wires out of there. Yeah, it's gonna be more of a hassle.
Yeah, probably.
You know what I'm gonna say though?
What's that?
I always enjoy the episodes where we get to record together in person, whether we're at PAX or whether we're at Scoop Fest or any other places we've been able to kind of meet, and the three of us get to be in the same room. We can hold hands. We can get around the microphone, get a little back rub train going, and just be there in person. It's always an extra fun dynamic when we are together.
You are so prescient, Phil, because my next question was, you have recorded together in person several times at several different venues. What's different about recording together in the same room versus virtually, better / different? Like, is it truly different, or is it really pretty much the same? Like, what's your experience been? Again, since you brought it up, Phil, let's start with you. What's sort of what do you like best about the recording all in the same room?
The smells. The
Makes
sweet
sense.
Smells, the manly musk, the pheromones leaking out of every orifice.
The dark rooms where you're eating food that you don't know what it is, stuff like that.
Oh man, don't even.
Oh, that was the best.
I don't need that kind of anxiety in my life.
Best.
Oh my gosh. Oh boy.
So funny.
Goodness me. You ever
You
want
could
to
just
see
feel
me?
the anxiety radiating from, even though I couldn't look
But
you in
Phil,
the eye or anything. I just knew that it was there.
When
Holding
you
back.
look at Phil, he pulls it off. You could not tell that he has anxiety about anything. He's the coolest cucumber in the world.
It's true.
I cannot put the word anxiety and Phil Theobald together. It doesn't
true.
make sense.
But man, oh man, if you ever want to see me slowly just push back a panic attack, just take me and throw me into a dark room and say, here, eat this mysterious substance. Oh my gosh.
Love it.
No, but
Oh,
the when we do get a chance to be together and record, yeah, it's definitely a different vibe. We're sitting next to each other. We're all gathered around a microphone. We're looking at each other in the face in real time. We're seeing all of our body language, just how we're moving around. It's the same having a conversation with your friends when you're hanging out together, or if you're on like a Zoom call. It's the same thing, and it's just
yeah.
you feel a little more comfortable because you're sharing that same space. You're breathing each other's air. So yeah, it feels more intimate because it is more intimate.
Mm.
And and again, because we are such good friends, the three of us, and we have been for way too
Long
long.
time.
Yeah. And we don't get that opportunity to hang out together in person very often. And it's when we do, it's usually it's a special occasion,
Right.
kind of a treat. On and we're usually doing something fun. We're in Vegas at a comedy convention. We're everyone's in Seattle for PAX, so we're hanging out and driving around to retro game shops and having fun. So yeah, there's a different energy that is brought to those episodes.
So
Yeah.
as a listener, you can almost tell how much fun you guys are having every week when you do the show. But the in-person episodes, they definitely have a different feel to them in a way that's really hard to sort of describe. But it just feels like you guys are having even more fun when you're all hanging out in the same room, especially when you add in like typically at Scoop Fest Vegas. So Greg, like, is that feeling accurate? Like, is it more fun to be together in person? And what does that dynamic, or what dynamics change or are the same when you're in the same room together versus, your typical recording over the internet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Phil really hit the nail on the head there, being in the same room and being able to sort of read each other's body language and play off each other a little bit easier. Also, a lot of those episodes, of course, come after having spent a couple of days together, sharing experiences and things like that, which we definitely don't get to do otherwise. I mean, when we meet regularly to record over the internet, we're telling each other about our weeks, whereas when we record in person, we're generally coming from a place of shared experience over the last couple of days, which I think really makes a difference, which is one of the reasons why most of the podcasts where the people are in one room recording the dynamic is much better. Yeah, although I will say with the comedy, going to Scoop Fest and recording episodes in front of an audience, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. That makes me so nervous. But yeah, the eating in the dark thing was definitely one of the best moments from those. That was just great.
Goodness gracious.
And then the other nice thing is whenever we get to go to some place together, we post lots of pictures that make it look like we're on one big group date for like a week. So
But we weren't?
which we've had people comment on.
I was certainly treating it as such.
CJ, what about
be the inside spoon?
CJ?
You're the shortest.
What about you recording in front of an audience and being all together in the same room? Are the dynamics a lot different, or once you hit the record button and you start talking, does it sort of feel familiar, or is it a big change?
Well, I'll tell you what, Rich. I at least don't have to say everybody do the clap so that I can sync the audio files up, and that helps a whole lot.
I was going to say that's no small thing. That's a big thing.
That's right. In podcasting, absolutely
Done
is.
right. Absolutely.
Don't have to worry about whether like Phil's Audacity clipped some seconds out of his audio or something like that, which happens occasionally to either Greg or Phil. But
Sorry.
yeah, it's
Doesn't sound like something that would happen to me.
yeah, it's different without lag though, right? Like I think we've gotten good enough over the years to like know when somebody else is gonna say something.
That's right, CJ.
Jesus Christ. Like leave open a bit for somebody else to come up with a point like I'm leaving right now. But
That's a very good point, CJ.
there we go.
That's a hell of a point.
Yeah. When you're in person, of course, I have to be slapped by Phil because that was a thing early on in some of our live or together shows. So
forgot about
happy
that.
I don't have to deal with that anymore.
Indeed.
The abuse. The abuse.
So earlier on, we were talking a little bit about the fourth chair. At what point, CJ, did you basically give up on having a fourth chair, and why was I not asked?
I think we're learning why you weren't asked right now because of that attitude.
That attitude, man.
All kidding. No, seriously, yeah. I mean, you guys had a fourth chair for a while, different people, and then, and honestly, like,
it around.
but I mean, all kidding aside, like from my perspective, and again, I'm as big a fan of a lot of the different folks that have been on the show, but it does work really well with just the three of you. Almost, it's like the real Player One podcast of sorts. I mean, do you agree, CJ? And if so, what do you think sort of makes that true?
I mean, I think it was hard with 4 people. If we're going to do a 90-minute show, for everybody to really like speak their piece and talk about the games that they played in any detail and have it be a tight 90, right? Like it would start to get over 2 hours. And it's like, that's a bit of a slog for any of us, really, especially because we're doing this on Sunday night and Phil and I anyway need to eat dinner afterwards.
Get the kid to bed.
Yeah, you guys have it so hard. We finish at midnight for me.
You have no idea how rough it is for us here in the Pacific Northwest, but so yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of great fourth chairs, a lot of great people who have joined us on the show, but it's hard to like say yes, we need a fourth person regularly when this dynamic, anyway, I think we all sort of recognize this dynamic between the three of us just works so well. And yeah, we didn't want to,
a certain measure of well.
We didn't want to have to bring somebody in because then they also have to figure out when can they jump in, and it's hard. It's a much harder dynamic to jump in on than you might think. For sure.
And this is how excellent CJ is at being the boss of the show. At the 90-minute mark of tonight, he is saying, it's really good to keep it at a tight 90. And, I don't know if he knew that I was going to pick up on that it's time to wrap it up there, Rich, but I picked up on it, CJ. I picked up on that.
I did not. This could go 4 more hours. Let's giant bomb this thing.
So I have one final question. And it is
before you do that. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah,
I just want to jump in on what CJ was saying there a minute ago, because I always thought that there's one other element here, which is when we were back in Chicago, and Phil and CJ have known each other a lot longer than either of them have known me. But because they're both from the Chicagoland area and they both worked at Ziff Davis before I ever got there. But I will say that while I loved so many of the people that I worked with at Ziff Davis, the three of us were actually part of a social group that, the members of Ziff Davis, out of that group, we were the 3 members of Ziff Davis. And again, CJ and Phil kind of invited me into that group, but we would all go hang out outside of work very frequently, very regularly. So I think there's a level of camaraderie that came from that as well, which, again, not that I wasn't close with other members of the staff when I worked at Ziff Davis, but I was definitely closest with these two, and definitely spent more time outside of work with them than I did outside of work with other people there. So I think that's part of it. I think that's where the dynamic comes from. And yeah, I think we just finally got tired of having to replace fourth chairs over and over again, and finally asked ourselves the question, like, why do we need 4 people? Yeah. 3 people's working. So a final question, and this is for Phil. Oh. Phil, you're gonna have a little work to do here, okay? Just so you know. He doesn't excel at that.
So Phil,
yeah.
If Sam Raimi,
here we go,
Milo,
Oh dear.
and
Ooh.
Satan.
Oh,
So much for that tight 90.
We're chatting about Player One Podcast making it to episode 800. I think it might sound a little bit like this.
Oh, I'm very excited that the Play Me Boys podcast is doing a great show. They've been working so hard for so many years, even longer than I've been in the art of movie making. Now, of course, here's the thing. I really enjoy Player One podcast. I thought it was really a nice show. But then me daddy, Mr. Molyneux, he wouldn't let me listen to it because sometimes they say some naughty language. And I would go around the house saying, "Oh, you Mr. Molyneux, I think you're a right." And then he would get really cross at me and he'd send me to my room without me supper.
Let me tell you.
That.
You like that one, Greg? Didn't expect that one. Oh, that was a good one. Yeah, that Milo's a real piece of work. It's a real piece of work. I hit the wrong button. I was supposed to go, but then I hit the wrong button. I'm just learning how to use this thing. Don't mind me. You know what I really am curious about? I wonder how it would sound if me, the devil, was actually Sam Raimi. I think it might sound a little something like this. I hope everyone's enjoying my new Spider-Man movies.
So there you go. You got that kind of thing going on.
I love that the devil had nothing to say about the show.
Oh, the show sucks. Don't get me wrong. It's a terrible show full of douchebags and jerks.
Whew. So I will say this again, as the official Player One Podcast super fan, nothing made me happier than I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, when Phil said, "Well, now that we're pretty much at 800, we have to go to 1,000." I was like, "Yes, yes."
I probably shouldn't have said that.
Did you know that the date? And by the way, math is not my strong suit. Did you know that when the Player One Podcast records its 1,000th episode, the date will be January 4th, 2026. So that will likely coincide with your 2025 Game of the Year episode. So the question is, the final question, even though I said it was the final question, will there even be anything that resembles a traditional video game by January of 2026?
Oh my gosh. I'll be 50 years old. I'll be almost 51.
we'll all be playing our new games via subscription services, and there won't be any more physical games. Obviously, they'll be piecemealed out in microtransaction packages.
Based
Sprinkled with NFTs.
Based on the traditional release cadence, I will still be playing Gran Turismo 7.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, this will be the last Gran Turismo ever, I think. It'll just be carrying on forever.
The Last of Us Part 3 will be a live service game.
Oh, man.
No.
Well,
do you really think physical games will be gone
No, I
in
don't.
4 years?
No.
Yeah, okay.
But I think they'll certainly be on their way out.
Okay.
I mean, it'll probably be like vinyl, right? Like now you can actually buy vinyl albums again, but for a long time you couldn't, but now you can, but it's still not the main way that they're purchased, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I will just say once again, thank you guys. Thank you so much. As somebody who listens each and every week, I am delighted to listen to every episode. And I know that many, many, many people out there feel the same way. Thank you guys for simultaneously shining a light on the video game industry with all its goodness, its absurdities, its problems, its joy, its communities, from a place that's neither jaded nor sycophantic. Just three older, fatter, and mostly balder guys who genuinely like to chat with each other and have thousands of fans who enjoy hearing it. We all appreciate it very much because through all of the years, all the games, all the podcasts, all the forums, all the voicemails, all the tweets, all the discords, you guys still show up every single week and you make our world a better place for that. I mean that 100%. It is just so much fun to hear you guys every single week. I really appreciate it. And we all really, really, really hope you keep going way past 1,000 and beyond. Thank you so much for doing what you guys do. You're the best.
Oh, you're super kind.
Thank
Ron.
you,
My gosh.
Rich.
It's all true.
Might be a little superfluous. but we appreciate it. My gosh. Very sweet.
So now I will officially transition from host to, I believe, Phil, you're going to take us out like you normally do every single week, but I don't want to.
Yeah, Phil, go ahead, start us off.
Yeah, start us off, Phil.
And that's our show for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to do all the other stuff CJ says in the outro.
You mean
Well,
like alrighty, and that is our show for this
There
week.
you
Thank you
go.
very much for listening. If you have a question for us, would like to comment on something you heard, you can direct that to @P1 Podcast on the Twitters, or you can go to our internet website at player1podcast.com. There you'll find contact information, find blog entries about Sega CD stuff from Mr. Greg Stewart and Generation 16 episodes there as well. And you will find show notes and links to all the things that we talked about. Maybe not so much in this episode, but most episodes. And link to our Discord server will also be there where you can discuss this episode with us and our other listeners.
If you would like to subscribe to the Player One Podcast, you can do so by visiting player1podcast.com or by loading up your favorite podcast listening app. We're also on Stitcher Radio or on Spotify. You can like us on Facebook. You can watch video archives of our show on the youtubes.com/P1 Podcast, or you can watch us live most weeks on the YouTubes, on the Twitters, on the Facebooks, on the Twitch.televisions, all over the darn place. Just follow our Twitter account, which is just @P1 Podcast, to find out when we are doing our next live show. Typically, it is Sunday nights, and it is at 5:30 specific time. So join in, won't you? And I'll tell you what, if you like what you've heard, and how could you, head over to patreon.com/P1 Podcast. Throw a few shekels our way, because who knows, your hard-earned Patreon support
Might allow me to show up. If CJ decides to waste a lot of money on a fancy piece of high-tech garbage, that a portal to hell, that's what he bought. A delicious portal
Really,
to the underworld.
I'm regretting this every
That's right.
every
I threw
time.
out the receipt. There's no taking it back. It's
Damn.
been opened. The protective film. Peel this off.
Even the devil can't get a refund now.
I peeled it right off and threw it away. This is staying here now, you dumb.
Oh my god.
Greg is secretly delighted by all this.
I am so not.
He has to put on that face, that cranky face that he's known for, but he's smiling inside. I can tell.
Oh.
I see what's in your heart of hearts, Greg. It is black as pitch. But you're having a good time, so that's the important part.
Oh, good.
Tell you what, though, your Patreon dollars do, of course, help support our show. They keep us streaming all these 800 weeks. Well, I mean, we weren't streaming all these 800. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm getting at. Jeez Louise, we're getting all technical here. But yeah, all that good stuff. And I'll tell you what, friendos, it's not just supporting us. You get a little something out of this deal too. If you are a Patreon friend of the $5 tier.
Ooh, cheap.
You bet it is, buddy. You get access to a special weekly bonus episode that we record right after this. We play games, crack wise, having fun doing all the stuff we can't do on the regular show. CJ, do we have a game to play this week?
Sure do, Phil.
Oh,
It
what do
is
we
an
have?
EGM review quiz.
Oh boy.
Yeah, maybe Rich will join us for it. I'm not sure.
I was just
Up
going to
to
ask
you,
if
of course, Rich, if
Hey,
you
hey,
want
look.
to.
If you'll have me, I'll be there.
please
Okay.
do. My gosh.
Yeah.
So join us for that. And if you have a couple bucks left over, tell you what you can do. Head over to patreon.com/generation16 where you can help support Greg Stewart's outstanding
And it is outstanding.
web series about North America's favorite runner-up, the Sega Genesis.
Thank you, Phil. And if
You're
you
very
are a
welcome.
backer of the $5 per episode variety,
also cheap.
That's what I
You
thought.
knew it. You knew I was
knew it.
showing back up.
Yep. I saw the shoulder move.
There it is.
Gotta push that button.
You get access to the weekly commute, which is a weekly vlog about the development of the latest episode, what I'm playing, different things going on in my life. Last week was a game room tour that I've been promising for quite a long time, but an hour long. So yeah, please consider supporting the show.
It's well worth it. Well worth it.
Thanks,
Greg
bro.
puts together a darn fine video game history retrospective.
Thank you, sir.
I will say that. Well, I suppose that's it. 800 down. Ready to
Yeah.
go. CJ.
They be fast and we be slow. Oh wait, so
Exactly.
we're done.
Exactly. CJ,
Yeah.
thank you very much
Thank you, Phil.
for joining us. My gosh.
Yes.
Gregory,
Yo,
thank you for joining as well.
thank you, Philip.
Of course. And of course, big old thank you to our special guest, the Dark Lord himself, Satan.
Thank you for having me. What a treat.
And of course, a genuine, big old, super special thank you to the MC with the most charisma, the nicest dude this side of the Rio Grande, Rich Grisham, for hosting our 800th show. Thank you so much, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Hey, thank you guys. I
My
love
goodness.
the show. Love you guys. Thank you for letting me crash your party. And I hope I can, maybe do this again sometime for another monumental episode of the Player One podcast at the right time and place.
Well, we would love to have you back. Absolutely.
Since I invite myself to these things, I might as well keep on inviting myself, right?
That's
Like,
true.
why not?
Working so far.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, folks. I guess that's it. And a big old thank you to you, our wonderful, wonderful listeners, every single one of you. My gosh. Please take care of yourselves. Please take care of your loved ones, your family, your friends. Do what you's got to do to be safe. Take care of everyone. Be happy. Be nice. We love you all. We hope to see you on the big old 801 next week.
Mm.
Bye-bye.
Greg's gonna be hosting by himself.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to be here.
Oh, neither of you are gonna be. Oh, that's good.
I don't
good
think I'm going to be here next week.
warning.
Yeah.
Rich, you busy next week?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Tune in for my one-man show next week.
Gonna be
I don't know what it's about yet.
It up.
I don't know what it's
boy.
about yet, but it'll be something.
We'll figure something out.
You can read your manifesto to everyone.
There you go.
That'll take a couple hours.
Let me
Yeah.
see. I think I got a preview. It has the word Canadian and truckers in it. So
Oh, there we
you
go.
know.
Oh, boy. Tune in to see what happens next week, folks. Should
Bye,
be
everybody.
interesting. I mean, I'll
Bye.
never hear it.